Okay. So the 10 topics are Atra Sarga Visarga, Sthanam Poshanam Utaya, Manvantara Ishanukata, Nirodha, Muktir Ashraya. So Sarga discusses the universal creation by the Supreme Lord. Visarga is about the secondary creation by Lord Brahma. Sthanam is about the positioning of living entities in various planetary systems. Poshanam, which is what we'll be focusing on over the next few weeks, is about the Lord's protection towards his devotees. And then Uti is inclination to act. Manvantara is the reign of Manus. Ishanukata is the topics of the Lord's various incarnations and his devotees. Nirodha is annihilation. Mukti is liberation. And Ashraya is the supreme shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. So, broadly speaking, these 10 topics are spread like this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, for example, Sarga is covered in the 3rd canto, Nirodha is covered in the 12th canto, Visarga is covered in the 4th canto, Sthiti, the positioning of the various planetary systems, is covered in the 5th canto. Poshana, or protection, which is what we'll be covering, is covered in the 6th canto through the pastimes of Ajamila, then Vitrasura, and Indra. And Uti is 7th canto. Manvantara is the 8th canto. Ishanukata is the 9th canto. Mukti is the 11th canto. And finally, Ashraya is the 10th canto. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be the literary incarnation of God. So, what does that mean? So, the literary incarnation of God, because see, the lotus feet is said to be the first 2 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. The thighs are the 3rd and 4th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. The navel is the 5th canto. The chest of Krishna is the 6th canto. 7th and 8th are the arms of Krishna. 9th canto is the throat of Krishna. The 10th canto is a beautiful smiling face of Krishna. The 11th canto is the forehead of Krishna. And the 12th canto is the crown of Krishna. So I wanted to start this series on an auspicious note by talking about a pastime of Srila Prabhupada. So this is a pastime where there is one Mataji, Mula Prakriti Mataji at that time. And I heard this in the memories of Srila Prabhupada, wherein Prabhupada saw her distributing Srimad Bhagavatam, and he called her to his room and he asked her about what she was telling people when she was distributing Srimad Bhagavatam. And she said, Srila Prabhupada, I would just pick some prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam and just read from those prayers, and people would get inspired and buy the books. So when Prabhupada heard this, his eyes lit up, and he asked her to get the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he opened to the specific verse, Srimad Bhagavatam 1st canto, 3rd chapter, 43rd verse. And the translation of this verse is brilliant in the sense that it says, this Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So it is said by our acharyas, like just like when the moon sets, the sun rises. So the moon is like Krishna. When the moon set by his departure, the sun rose in the form of this wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Purana, as is being described here. If you could please mute your phones. Thank you. So the Bhagavad Purana is like the sun which is rising. Hare Krishna. Please mute your phones if you can. Thank you. So the Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, which rises when the moon sets. So this we covered. So basically, what is Srimad Bhagavatam covering in essence? It's about one day of Brahma. and all the Manvantaras are covered, the 14 Manvantaras in one day of Brahma. I'm just going to skip all this because we want to get to today's topic. So today's topic is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6. And as I mentioned briefly, Canto 6 covers the Lord's protection to people who transgress the laws of Dharma, and also Canto 6 covers the Lord's protection towards his devotees. So this happens a lot. Like, we are constantly committing mistakes, transgressing, making offenses, and so on. So how does the Lord tolerate all that? How does the Lord protect when we make mistakes? That is the essential theme of this particular canto. And this is illustrated through three pastimes: Ajamila, Indra, and Chitraketu. Here is the first pastime that we will be covering in detail, is the Ajamila pastime, where Ajamila commits a mistake in the sense of associating with a prostitute, and he falls down. Chitraketu commits a very small accidental mistake when he smiles or accidentally smiles at Lord Shiva, and he's cursed by Mother Parvati. And also Indra commits a lot of mistakes in the sense of ignoring his own guru, Brihaspati, and he has to face some serious repercussions because of that, and how he is protected. So these are certain main topics that we will be covering in the entire sixth canto. We'll try to cover all of these things in the sixth canto. So coming to today's specific part, so we are going to start from sixth canto, chapter 1. It starts with a very interesting question by Parikshit Maharaj. So the first question is, how could people be saved from entering hellish planets? So when people make mistakes, how could people be saved from entering hellish planets? So it's a very interesting question that is asked by Parikshit Maharaj. And then the answer is that, so Sukadeva Goswami immediately tests Parikshit Maharaj by talking to him about Karma Kanda first, and then he talks about Jnana Kanda as solutions. And immediately Parikshit Maharaj rejects both of Sukadeva Goswami's proposals of Karma Kanda, atonement, and Jnana Kanda as solutions. And then Sukadeva Goswami starts to explain bhakti as the solution and glorifies bhakti, wherein he says, even sinful persons who absorb their mind in the Lord do not see Yamadutas. So here's a very nice way of putting it. Even sinful persons who absorb their minds in the Lord do not see Yamadutas at the time of death. And then he starts illustrating this whole Ajamila story. So that's the background. Because we won't be covering some of these verses, I'm describing the background. And then, of course, this particular chapter talks about Ajamila's sinful history, and then how he chants Narayan at the time of death. And he chants the word Narayan because Narayan was his 10th son. He does not chant Narayan thinking that it's the Lord, but he chants Narayan's name because Narayan apparently was his 10th son. So the Vishnudutas immediately appear there and forbid and chastise the Yamadutas and glorify the holy names and release Ajamil. Then Ajamil laments for what he did and performs Bhakti Yoga and goes back to Vaikuntha. And then when the Yamadutas go back, this is the third chapter. What is the response of Yamaraj regarding the defeat of the Yamadutas? Yamaraj explains to his servants about the position of the Lord and the glories of the holy name. So in a nutshell, the first 3 chapters of 6th canto is what is depicted here. So now let's zoom in to the first chapter, and I will quickly go over the first 19 verses, and we'll be starting today's reading from the 20th verse, which is the next section. So here the section is Sukadeva Goswami is testing Parikshit Maharaj and establishing the position of bhakti. So Sukadeva Goswami, as I mentioned briefly, the first question is, how does one prevent oneself from going to the hellish planets after committing a mistake. So Sukadeva Goswami tests Parikshit Maharaj by talking about Karma Kanda first. He says that if one does not perform atonement, then he will certainly go to hell. One should undergo atonement in proportion to the sins committed. Parikshit Maharaj immediately rejects this. And then he says, what is the use of such atonement by one who cannot get rid of the sinful propensity? And then he gives the example, the analogy, that such atonements is like elephant after taking bath, throws dust over his body. So immediately Parikshit Maharaj counters that. And then the next section is Jnana. So Sukadeva Goswami then says, okay, if you're not interested in Karma Kanda, let's talk about Jnana Kanda. And then he says, the real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge. So he's now focusing on Jnana to see the reaction of Parikshit Maharaj. And even this, Parikshit Maharaj rejects. And that is when Sukadeva Goswami starts glorifying this path of bhakti. And then in 6.115, he says, only a rare person who has taken to unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the sins completely with no possibility that they will revive. And the example that he gives, or the metaphor that he gives, is just as the sun dissipates fog. And then I'll continue. If a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life unto the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. And 6.117, the path followed by devotees is most auspicious and free from fear, and it is authorized by Shastras. So I will read one more verse, and then we can start from the 20th verse. So the final verse in this section that Sukadeva Goswami says is that persons who have even once surrendered completely unto Lord's lotus feet and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes are completely freed from all sinful reactions. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraj or his order carriers. I'll repeat this one more time. Persons who have even once, I want to emphasize the word once, persons who have even once surrendered completely unto Lord's lotus feet and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes are completely freed from all sinful reactions. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraj or his order carriers. Hariva. So I'll stop sharing now. And now I request one of the readers, I think we can start with Sundari Saki Mataji. If you can please read from the 20th verse.
Okay.
I will share my screen also, but you can read from my screen or from your screen, however you want to do it. So this is text one. So for those of you who are new to Vedabase, I got some messages. So what you can do is you can go to vedabase.io and then you can look for Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, click on Advanced View, and then you can select verse, text, translation, purport. And that's what I've done here. And I'm going to the 20th verse that Sundari Saki Mata is going to read.
So probably do I read the verse translation? How?
Just the translation, Mataji.
Just the translation.
Yeah, thank you. Just 1 second. 19, 20. Yes, this is the verse that we just read. And now Mataji is going to read this. This is 19 and 20. Yes, please. This one.
Should I begin?
Yes, Mataji, please.
Text 20. In this regard, learned scholars and saintly persons describe a very old historical incident involving a discussion between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraj. Please hear of this from me.
You can read the purport also, Mataji. Thank you.
The purport. The Puranas or old histories are sometimes neglected by unintelligent men who consider their descriptions mythological. Actually, the descriptions of the Puranas or the old histories of the universe are factual, although not chronological. The Puranas record the chief incidents that have occurred over many millions of years, not only on this planet, but also on other planets within the universe. Therefore, all learned and realized Vedic scholars speak with references to the incidents in the Puranas. Srila Rupa Goswami accepts the Puranas to be as important as the Vedas themselves. Therefore, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he quotes the following verse from the Brahma Yamala. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidin Vina Aikantika Harer Bhakti Utpatyayaiva Kalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in the society. A devotee of Krishna must refer not only to the Vedas but also to the Puranas. One should not foolishly consider the Puranas mythological. If they were mythological, Sukadev Goswami would not have taken the trouble to recite the old historical incidents concerning the life of Ajamila. Now the history begins as follows.
Thank you, Mataji. So would you like to share one or two things that that you got from this particular purport of Srila Prabhupada?
I am surprised to read that Narada Pancharatra is considered simply an unnecessary disturbance in the society. That's what
Yes, yes. So what is the theme that Srila Prabhupada is focusing in this purport? Or anything that you, please go ahead.
They don't consider that as mythology. Yeah, that's what is the main thing that he.
Yes. So Prabhupada is emphasizing that we must focus on the Vedas and we should not consider all these pastimes as mythology. Otherwise, Sukadeva Goswami would not have taken the trouble to recite this old historical incident. He calls it historical incident concerning the life of Ajamil. Thank you, Mataji. So Nitya can read the next one. And then we can go in the same sequence. So one verse. So Sundari Saki Mataji, Nitya, then Jitendra Prabhu, and Krishnan Prabhu, and then we can repeat.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
In the city known as Kanyakubja, there was a Brahmana named Ajamila who married a prostitute maidservant and lost all his Brahminical qualities because of the association of that low caste woman. Purport. The fault of illicit connection with women is that it makes one lose all Brahminical qualities. In India, there is still a class of servants called Shudras, whose maidservant wives are called Sudranis. Sometimes people who are very lusty establish relationships with such maidservants and sweeping women, since in the higher statuses of society, they cannot indulge in the habit of women hunting, which is strictly prohibited by social convention. Ajamila, a qualified Brahmana youth, lost all his Brahminical qualities because of his association with a prostitute. But he was ultimately saved because he had begun the process of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, in the previous verse, Sukadeva Goswami spoke of the person who has only once surrendered himself at the lotus feet of the Lord, Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo, or has just begun the Bhakti Yoga process. Bhakti Yoga means with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting of Lord Vishnu's names, as in the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chanting is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declares, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, Gatiranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, The only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. The process of chanting the holy name of the Lord is always superbly effective, but it is especially effective in this age of Kali. Its practical effectiveness will now be explained by Sukadeva Goswami through the history of Ajamila, who was freed from the hands of the Yamadutas simply because of the chanting of the holy name of Narayana. Parikshit Maharaj's original question was how to be freed from falling down into the hell, or into hands of Yamadutas. Sorry, Parikshit Maharaj's original question was how to be freed from falling down into the hell or into the hands of Yamadutas. In reply, Sukadeva Goswami is citing this old historical example to convince Parikshit Maharaj of the potency of Bhakti Yoga, which begins simply with the chanting of the Lord's name. All the great authorities of Bhakti Yoga recommend the devotional process, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Tannama Grahanadibihi.
Okay, thank you so much. Would you like to share something that you got from this? You don't have to, but
yeah, when I was just reading this, it says in India there is still a class of servants called Sudras and Sudranis. I was just reminded of how Vidura, his birth, he's born, of a Sudrani's association with the king, and how glorious is his past, is his life, and how he was very epitome, like epitomize the the tolerance aspect of devotional service. And then he ultimately not only received enlightenment by going into the Vanavas, but also he enlightened Dhritarashtra towards the end of the war, after the war, and all that. So I just thought about how even our Puranas glorify that aspect of the association of Sudranis with in the past with the kings. Of course, he's also the incarnation of Yamaraj, which is very connected here, because we are, Ajamil is also related, in the past time Yamaraj and Yamadutas come. So it is, it's kind of, I've just thinking about this connection between all of this is just, it just came to my mind. But I think the fact that's been emphasized here is no matter what, so like what you have read before about in this age of Kali, there is the only way to redemption, which Sukadeva Goswami ultimately allures Parikshit Maharaj into that, from Karma Kanda to Jnana, to Jnana, and then taking to Bhakti process, is that he's emphasizing that just simply by taking the holy names of the Lord, one's sin will be completely eradicated, and there is no chance to revive. That statement that you read, that was very hope-giving for me. That's all I have to say.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. If anybody else wants to share anything from the purport or from the pastime, please feel free to unmute and speak. It's not just that the reader should be able to speak, but anyone else also. We're churning the Bhagavatam, so if you have questions, comments, anything, feel free to unmute and speak. Thank you. Next, we have Jitendra Prabhu. If you're here.
Yes, Prabhu.
So we're doing 22, Prabhu.
22, yeah. This fallen Brahmana, Ajamil, gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. Purport. This verse indicates how degraded one becomes simply by indulging in illicit sex with a prostitute. Illicit sex is not possible with a chaste or aristocratic woman, but only with unchaste Shudras. The more society allows prostitution and illicit sex, the more impetus it gives to cheaters, thieves, plunderers, drunkards, and gamblers. Therefore, we first advise all the disciples in our Krishna consciousness movement to avoid illicit sex, which is the beginning of all abominable life, and which is followed by meat eating, gambling, and intoxication, one after another. Of course, restraint is very difficult, but it is quite possible if one fully surrenders to Krishna. Since all these abominable habits gradually become distasteful for a Krishna conscious person. If illicit sex is allowed to increase in a society, however, the entire society will be condemned, for it will be full of rogues, thieves, cheaters, and so forth. So, yeah, very strong purport by Prabhupada. Yeah, I mean, one thing that we all struggle with certain anarthas, which we would like to restrain, like we would like to exercise some restraint from. And here Prabhupada says something really nice towards the end, actually. Of course, restraint is very difficult, but it is quite possible if one fully surrenders to Krishna, since all these abominable habits gradually become distasteful for a Krishna conscious person. So this Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishtva Nivartate. So although the taste for worldly object remains, the yogi actually gets a higher taste by which he can easily give up the lower taste. So restraint in and of itself is very difficult. And that is the path of Neti Neti, the path of Jnana Yoga, where one is mechanically saying no to various things. But then since the soul is innately pleasure seeking, Anandamaya Bhyasat, it's difficult for it to say Neti Neti forever. So that is why the easier way is to attach our minds to Krishna, so that we fill our minds with Krishna consciousness in so much that the other unwanted things are crowded out. They are kind of, it's like Chaitanya Charan Prabhu gives an example. If there is mud in a cup, then you fill like pure water, and then you fill pure water to such a level that the mud actually is pushed out. So similarly, if we are able to fully surrender unto Krishna, and surrender means, I guess, trying to trying to engage in seva as much as possible, and keeping our minds involved in Krishna in that way, through whatever we are good at, that we can express our surrender, and that way we can exercise restraint. And it's not like oh, I can't do this, but it's more like, oh wow, I can do this, which is much better. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prabhu. The next was is 23. Krishnan Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. There is no purport.
But you can read the next. If there's no purport, then you read the next verse also.
Okay. My dear king, while he thus spent his time in abominable, sinful activities to maintain his life of many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. I'll read the next verse, translation. That old man Ajamila had 10 sons, of whom the youngest was a baby named Narayana. Since Narayana was the youngest of all the sons, he was naturally very dear to both his father and his mother. Purport. The word Pravayasaha indicates Ajamila's sinfulness, because although he was 88 years old, he had a very young child. According to Vedic culture, one should leave home as soon as he has reached 50 years of age. One should not live at home and go on producing children. Sex life is allowed for 25 years between the ages of 25 and 45, or at the most 50. After that, one should give up the habit of sex life, leave home as a vanaprastha, and then properly take sannyasa. Ajamila, however, because of his association with a prostitute, lost all Brahminical culture and became most sinful, even in his so-called household life. So, so I think here, let me go to the previous verse. In the previous verse, he says that he had many sons up to 88 years, and I think he's drawing a conclusion that the youngest was a baby named Narayana. So obviously he had this son when he was in his 80s, which is not an appropriate time to be having children, according to the according to the Varnashrama guidelines.
So, Prabhu, just one small thing I just want to add here. So, this particular pastime took place in Satyuga, wherein the lifespan of individuals at that time was 1 lakh years. So, given that context, so 88 was okay. I'm just telling you, like, yeah, in that context.
So this is Srila Prabhupada's instruction to us.
Yes, this is, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's his instruction to us that, we should, at the most, 50 years, and after that we should give up the habit of sex life, leave home, and as a vanaprastha, and then properly take sannyasa.
Yes.
So yes, it's very instructive. The verse is very instructive, and maybe this is one of the reasons for the imbalance in society now. Obviously, I'm just contemplating here that in society now, this balance is not maintained. People tend to have children at any time, or continue their grahastha life till any age. But that's just my speculation. Yeah, that's all I had, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Next, we're back to Sundari Saki Mataji.
Text 25. Because of the child's broken language and awkward movements, old Ajamila was very much attracted to him. He always took care of the child and enjoyed the child's activities. Purport. Here it is clearly mentioned that the child Narayana was so young that he could not even speak or walk properly. Since the old man was very attached to the child, he enjoyed the child's activities. And because the child's name was Narayan, the old man always chanted the holy name of Narayan. Although he was referring to the small child and not to the original Narayan, the name of Narayan is so powerful that even by chanting his son's name, he was becoming purified. Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Eva Kevalam. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore declared that if one's mind is somehow or other attracted by the holy name of Krishna, tasmad kenapi upayena mana Krishne niveshayet. One is on the path of liberation. It is customary in the Hindu society for parents to give their children names like Krishna Das, Govinda Das, Narayan Das, and Vrindavan Das. Thus, they chant the names Krishna, Govinda, Narayan, and Vrindavan and get the chance to be purified. I think the main point that Srila Prabhupada is making here is how the chanting of the holy name is what is the most important for this age, and how it can be done under any circumstance. Like Ajamil was not even thinking of Narayan, but still he got, he was becoming purified. That's the point that I think that's making.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Mataji. Next, Nitya, 26.
When Ajamila chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name, Narayana, Ajamila could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is kind to the conditioned soul. Although this man is completely forgot Narayana, he was calling his child saying, Narayana, please come and eat this food. Narayana, please come and drink this milk. Somehow or the other. Therefore, he was attached to the name Narayana. This is called Ajnana Sukriti. Agyata Sukriti. Although calling for his son, he was unknowingly chanting the name of Narayana, and the holy name of Supreme Personal Godhead is so transcendently powerful that his chanting was being counted and recorded. So yeah, I guess it's again just reiterated the point that because Ajamila was always saying the name Narayana, Narayana in every sentence, and spending a lot of time with his youngest son, and was very attached to the youngest son. This attachment kind of created a Gyata Sukriti, which ultimately delivered him from the clutches of the Yamadutas. I guess I do have a question or a discussion point. I don't know if how we can take it. So when we do chanting, we are always told not to, commit offenses, namaprad, by, like taking the name of the holy name in vain. So how is this? I know that there is a lot have been said about Ajamil's history also. I mean, he had a very pious life, pious Brahmana. So he had accumulated a lot of pious credit, so that he's he's into this current point of in his life, he's kind of reaping that benefit also of leading a pious life in his past. But just taking this into consideration of just by merely taking the name of the Lord without even meaning to take the name of the Lord. I mean, he was just playing with his son, because his son's name is Narayana. He's just getting the Gyan Sukriti and ultimately getting delivered from the clutches of Yamaduta. How are we supposed to take advice from this in terms of chanting? We were always told to not to do Namaprad, not to take Lord's name in vain.
Okay. So it's a great question. I think Krishnan Prabhu has his hand raised, and we will address this because this is one of the themes that I wanted to talk about as well. First is just the utterance of Narayan without actually meaning the original Narayan. How did this benefit? And the second thing you talked about is the offenses. We are always told to be very careful not to commit namaprad, but in this particular case, he's chanting Narayan, but he's committing offenses. So how is that counted and recorded? These are two things that you brought up. So I just want to hear what Krishna Prabhu has to say. We'll just have two more verses. We can read those two verses and then we'll address all this. We'll have an open discussion on this topic. So Krishnan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yeah, mine is not as important, but once in a talk by Sachinandan Maharaj, I heard the story of a rat in Mayapur.
Yes.
It thinks of the wick in the
Yes.
the lamp as butter, and it picks it up, and then it realizes that it's a flame, and it shakes its head in circles, and it gets it gets this Jnata Sukriti as well. So
Yes.
I just thought I'd relay that. And
Yeah,
but I think Mataji's question is please, if you can address that.
Yeah, so just to add to that pastime, Prabhu, so basically the rat actually starts to eat the ghee wick, and then it circumambulates the altar actually 3 times, and then it dies, and then, but because it did that, it got liberated, is the pastime. But thank you for bringing that up. It's the same concept.
Prabhuji, can I add one more quick thing? It's a personal story.
Yes,
So
yes.
I worked in the World Trade Center building in Boston for 5 or 6 years, from 2014 onwards. And till 2017, I didn't know that Srila Prabhupada's Jaladuta came there. And I would regularly circumambulate the World Trade Center just for going on walks. So I walked there all the time. I just circumambulated the building again and again and again. And then, I got access to Srila Prabhupada's books in 2017 or 2018. So, so there is some merit to it, at least in my experience.
Wonderful.
Even without knowing it, there is obviously there is merit to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So that is why we go out on the streets to chant the holy names, so that even if someone accidentally praises someone chanting the holy names, or does some seva, or just glorifies the Lord or anything, they get Agyat Sukriti. Even without them knowing, they're actually glorifying the Lord or his devotees or something, and then they get this immense benefit even without knowing. And also, many of us also, like Kameshwar Prabhu, he's named his son Gauranga. And now Jitendra Prabhu has named his son Prithu. So just by calling these names, we are unknowingly chanting the name of the Lord. And it is so transcendental and powerful that it is being counted and recorded. So we will talk about it more. But we just have two more verses. This section is from 20 to 29. We can finish that and then have a discussion. So next is 27, Jitendra Prabhu.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay. When the time of death arrived for the foolish Ajamil, he began thinking exclusively of his son Narayan. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami says, Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam Swadharma Parinishthaya Janmalabha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smriti. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by acquirement of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of one's occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Somehow or other, Ajamila consciously or unconsciously chanted the name of Narayan at the time of death, Ante Narayana Smriti. And therefore, he became all perfect simply by concentrating his mind on the name of Narayan. It may also be concluded that Ajamil, who was the son of a Brahmana, was accustomed to worshipping Narayan in his youth, because in every Brahmana's house there is a worship of Narayan Shila. This system is still present in India. In a rigid Brahmana's house, there is Narayana Seva, worship of Narayan. Therefore, although the contaminated Ajamil was calling for his son, by concentrating his mind on the holy name of Narayan, he remembered the Narayan he had very faithfully worshipped in his youth. In this regard, Srila Sridhara Swami expressed his verdict as follows. According to the Bhakti Siddhanta, it is to be analyzed that because Ajamila constantly chanted his son's name Narayan, he was elevated to the platform of Bhakti, although he did not know it. Similarly, Srila Veera Raghava Acharya gives this opinion. Although at the time of death he was chanting the name of his son, he nevertheless concentrated his mind upon the holy name of Narayan. Srila Vijayadhwaja Tirtha gives a similar opinion. Directly or indirectly, Ajamil factually remembered Narayan at the time of death. Ante Narayana Smriti. Yeah. I mean, Prabhupada is, I think, thrice he's quoting Ante Narayana Smriti, Ante Narayana Smriti. It's amazing how by reading his purports, we understand the focus of his message for us. But anyway, just my understanding about what Nitya Mataji also brought up, what Krishnan Prabhu added to, is that this, when he would eat, when he would do his daily things and calling out Narayan, that chanting, it didn't give him perfection, although it did give him some Agyata Sukriti. What did give him perfection was the intense, like the very intense kind of chanting that he did at the time of death. That gave him the second chance. I guess that is because we might also inattentively chant, or just mechanically chant. That will definitely give us Agyat Sukriti, but that will not give us perfection. For perfection, we have to chant like Ajamil really cried out at the end of life. So, and that also goes to show the glory of the holy name, that just offenselessly chanting it, just intensely chanting it at the time of death, even if we don't really mean to address the Lord, it takes that effect. This comes in one of the purports later on, because one of my friends actually brought up a very interesting point. When I told her about this pastime, she said, you guys do so much, you guys follow the 4 regulative principles, you guys don't eat onion, garlic, this, you do so many things. And then here you are telling me a story where this guy did everything against what you guys are doing. and at the end of life just chanted the name of God and then he was saved, right? So why are you doing all of this? So it was a very pertinent question from her. And then I didn't have so much background at that time, so I kind of fumbled when I answered her. But then later on, when I looked into the purports, one of the purports later on, Prabhupada writes that the holy name of the Lord is so potent that even if you chant it without addressing the Lord, it's like taking a medicine. If we take a medicine, a strong medicine, although we might not have any knowledge about the effect of the medicine will take effect anyway, like that. So, but then yeah, the point remains that at the end of life, his chanting was intense. It was not like a mechanical thing that we often do, that yeah, I'm just taking the name of Lord in vain. Definitely it was not like that. He really intensely called out Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. So that's what I guess saved him. So yeah, again, we can discuss later.
Yeah. So thank you, Prabhu. So this typically keeps coming up. Someone else also asked me when I was discussing this pastime several years ago that, okay, so if Ajamila could do this, then I can also take a gun and loudly chant with a lot of intensity, Hare Krishna, and just shoot myself. Then will I go back to Vaikuntha? This is a very practical question that he asked, So what is the answer? So I will address this, but we'll just finish off one more verse with from Krishnan Prabhu, 28 and 29, and that will complete the section. So Prabhuji, if you can please read the translation and purport to 28 and 29.
Yeah. Ajamila then saw three awkward persons with deformed bodily features, ears, twisted faces, and hair standing erect on their bodies. With ropes in their hands, they had come to take him away to the abode of Yamaraj. When he saw them, he was extremely bewildered. And because of attachment to his child, who was playing a short distance away, Ajamil began to call him loudly by his name. Thus, with tears in his eyes, he somehow or other chanted the name of Narayana. A person who performs sinful activities performs them with his body, mind, and words. Therefore, three order carriers from Yamaraj came to take Ajamil to Yamaraj's abode. Fortunately, even though he was referring to his son, Ajamil chanted the 4 syllables of the Harinam Narayana. And therefore, the order carriers of Narayana, the Vishnu Dutas, also immediately arrived there. Because Ajamil was extremely afraid of the ropes of Yamaraj, he chanted the Lord's name with tearful eyes. Actually, however, he never meant to chant the name of Narayana. He meant to call his son. Is that it? Or 30th also should read?
That's it, Prabhu. So you want to say anything about this purport or any of your realizations you want to share?
No, I think this purport, the descriptions of Yamaraj's order carriers is very interesting. Their fierce, twisted faces and hair standing erect on their backs, and maybe I didn't pay attention to this, but that Ajamil actually had tears in his eyes, and obviously the tears were because he was afraid of the ropes of Yamaraj.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing this point up. So Bhakti Rasamrit Swami, who's one of our sannyasis, so he mentioned, so he was Devamrit Prabhu before, but he met with a very serious accident and he was admitted in the hospital. And at that time, the person next to his bed was actually leaving their body, and he saw these Yamadutas. He actually told Radhanath Maharaj that he saw these grotesque, very horrible, scary looking Yamadutas appear one night. And not only that, he explained that they came with dogs as well. So when he saw this, he immediately told Maharaj, and then Maharaj said that, of course, this is mentioned in our scriptures. Why are you so amazed? And that person immediately, he left his body the next day. So then it was understood that the Yamadutas took the soul away. So it is a fact. It is a fact that Yamadutas do come at the time of death, and so on. So now coming back to this particular point, does anybody else want to share anything about this example that I gave? So chant Hare Krishna with a lot of intensity and I shoot myself. Will the Vishnu Dutas come to take me to Vaikuntha?
If I can chime in,
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I will get the reaction for committing suicide. But yeah, it is to my credit that I chanted the name. So maybe I will be given a chance. I will definitely not go to Vaikuntha.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to articulate this point, but that going to Vaikuntha was the desire. My desire is not so much to go and serve Narayan there, serve Vishnu there. It's more of, I want liberation. It's a selfish desire.
Yes.
With that desire, if I do, then definitely, I mean, ultimately, what is the difference between spiritual and material, right? That's whether I'm doing it for myself or whether I'm doing it for Krishna. Atmendriya priti vancha tare bali kama krishnendriya priti ichha dhare premanam. So that difference is there. So even if I want to go to Vaikuntha for my own gratification, to go away from the miseries, that is not Krishna conscious. That is actually a material desire in one sense.
Yes.
So I will get the severe reaction for committing suicide, but to that little credit that I got of chanting the name, maybe Krishna will give me an opportunity in my next life.
Okay. So thank you, Prabhu. So before, I'll just let one more person answer, and then I'll give you what Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad talks about this particular pastime, which I heard from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So I just want to explain that. So Nitya, you want to say something, and then we can address this.
Yeah, so in the previous purport, so it is just mentioned that although at the time of death he was chanting the name of his son, he nevertheless concentrated his mind upon the holy name of Narayan. But in this purport, it says that actually, however, he never meant to chant the holy name of Narayan. I feel that there is a contradiction. But nevertheless, I think I got clarity, a little bit clarity in this, is that it also answers your question about when I put the gun to my head and then I shoot myself and saying Hare Krishna, whether I'm just saying it out loudly, like just from the namesake, or am I really focusing, concentrating upon Krishna and saying it? It is just only Krishna knows, right? What from that, just mere the action itself does not convey anything, is what I'm getting from this. Just because Jamila could have reached out to his son, but then maybe that constantly saying his son's name ultimately led him to say at least once with a very concentrated way, thinking about the Narayana, the Murti that he worshipped when he was young, when he was a pious Brahmana once. So that split second of thought maybe made him, that's what caused him to attract the Vishnu Dutas, is what I'm thinking. So even in this case, if I shoot myself and I'm thinking about Krishna's lotus feet, then it's all good. But I'm just saying it, but I'm thinking about something else. Then that's where I'll get the whatever remembrance I have. That's what the next life will be for me.
Yes, Krishnan Prabhu.
The only other point that I want to add is, but even if you did think about the lotus feet, by taking one's life, one has wasted the God-given, because the body it's the Lord's body. Obviously we cannot take such, the body has to be used in the service of the Lord. So if it's not used in the service of the Lord, that itself will be a huge sin. And so it will probably negate any any credit you get by chanting the name, I would think.
Okay. So thank you all so much. Anyone else wants to say anything? I'd like to ask Kameshwar Prabhu if he wants to say anything, and then I'll tell you what Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad mentions in this context. Kameshwar Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes,
Yes.
Prabhu. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity. Actually,
Your voice is
bhakti
breaking,
is not
Prabhu.
at all a
Yes.
Yeah, just a minute. Maybe.
Yeah.
Actually, audible, Prabhu?
You can try now, Prabhu.
I'm audible now?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, there is no shortcut for bhakti, Prabhu. Actually, Ajamila did not get like that. So he got a lot of piety in previous life. He got a birth in a very highly elevated Brahmin family. He's not an ordinary guy. He got already 99% he reached actually. But suddenly, accidentally, he fall down. In Bhagavad Gita also, it was told that still you have to consider him as a sadhu only, sadhureva sadhura. Because once if he falls any practicing devotee, immediately if he has always he's having a chance to retaliate. He can come up like any time. So God always wants to give an opportunity to that soul, to give him an opportunity to come back again. So Krishna always looks for an opportunity. So like that, Ajamila is deserved to be saved. That's why God gave him direction in that way. It's not nobody gets like that. For example, you said that that man who committed suicide, he wants to trick. He wants to find the short way to reach the salvation. No, it's not possible. Definitely, he will not get any benefit. Because he's tricking, he's trying to cheat. It's not possible because Ajamila got it because he deserves it. He has previous account to his credit, so that's why he got it. So this is my personal opinion, probably.
Yeah, wonderful, Prabhu. Actually, you mentioned what I was going to say, but even though all of you gave different answers, the main theme of this particular canto is the protection of the Lord. The protection of the Lord is the main theme. So what exactly happens, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Chakravarti Pad says that when Ajamila was chanting Narayana, the 4-syllable Narayana, at that time, he was, as Chandra Prabhu also mentioned, he was in extreme pain. He was in extreme pain, and he initially called out to his son's name. Like he called out to his son, Narayana, Narayana, he was just calling. But then very quickly, he realized that his son can't do much to reduce his pain, because he was seeing the Yamadutas, they were pulling his soul from his body. And then he realized that his son can't do anything. And then that utterance of the name in that desperate state made him remember the original Narayan. So utterance led to remembrance, but mainly because of his past life, as Kameshwar Prabhu mentioned also. So there are parallels to this. So in the same canto, Vitrasura, it was only when the thunderbolt of Indra hit Vitrasura and he was in extreme pain, that is when he was able to remember the Lord. So how does the protection, so how does Krishna protect us? Krishna protects us by invoking his remembrance. So this is the theme that I wanted to focus on. Krishna protects us, protects his devotees by invoking his remembrance. Krishna does not protect us by any other means. The best benediction that we can get is that when we are in pain, Krishna gives us the remembrance of him, which is what happened in the case of Ajamil, which is what happened in the case of Vitrasur, and the same thing happened in the case of Gajendra also. When Gajendra's feet was getting chewed by that crocodile, in that intense pain, he could have easily forgotten the Lord. But who gave him the remembrance? Krishna protected him by invoking his remembrance. So this is one answer. The next answer is that the Bhagavatam emphasizes certain points. So this particular pastime emphasizes the power of the holy names, and it is an extraordinary pastime. It is an extraordinary pastime which is away from the standard in one sense. So the extraordinary pastime has an emphasis. The emphasis is on the power of the holy names, but we should not take that extraordinary circumstance and apply it in our own lives. We should still continue to do the standard. What is the standard? We must continue to chant the holy names while attentively hearing the holy names. That is our standard. But this particular pastime emphasizes the power of the holy names. Just like this, in the 5th canto, Bharat Maharaj. So that particular pastime also, how he becomes a deer and then he becomes Jada Bharat, because that particular pastime is also an extraordinary pastime which emphasizes on the power of association. So all these pastimes have a particular emphasis. So we can't take those pastimes literally and they say that, oh, this happened to Ajamila, so it will happen to me also. Take a gun and shoot myself. It won't work like that. It worked because Ajamila had a history. It worked because Vitrasura was Chitraketu. It worked because Gajendra was Indradumna in his previous life. So these are the two things that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions. Yes, Manan Prabhu, please go ahead.
So, wanted to get some clarification. Did Ajamil go to Vaikuntha when the Vishnuyutas came, or did he
Yes.
have to take another birth?
So that's I wanted to mention that. Thank you for bringing this up. So now, because his intention was to call his son, even though the utterance led to the remembrance of the Lord, the Vishnudutas gave him a second chance. The Vishnudutas gave him a second chance where he could completely purify himself and really chant the holy names with all earnestness. So that is why he got the second chance. And that is the continuation of the pastime. We'll come to that later, but yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
One more, if I can add.
Yes, Prabhu. Jitana Prabhu, go ahead.
I had heard a clip of Radhanath Maharaj many months ago. A question was asked to him, how can I remember Krishna at the time of death? So he gave an interesting answer, which you actually mentioned, Gaur Kumar Prabhu. He said that you cannot remember Krishna at the time of death. You cannot, because you are in so much pain. It is said that the pain of death is like 40,000 scorpions biting the person at simultaneously or something like that. That intense is the pain.
Yes.
And then in that intense pain, how are we going to remember anything? Like we'll all be disoriented completely.
Yes.
So he said, but it's like Krishna is Swaraj, just like we say, right? We don't want to see Krishna, but we want to serve Krishna in such a way that he's pleased to see us. He will manifest himself in front of us. So similarly, he said that we should, perform our sadhana, perform our, duties towards Krishna in such a way, with such a humble and devotional mood that at the time of death, Krishna will give us the remembrance of him. It's not that we, by our own effort, by my own sadhana, I have become so powerful now that, for Krishna at the time of death. It doesn't work that way, he said. So, it's very, because typically that's what we know, that, right? I'm doing everything, chanting, reading, hearing, associating with devotees. I'm doing all this so that at the time of death, I will remember Krishna. No. So it's not exactly like that. I'm doing all this so that I can please Krishna, so that he will give me his remembrance. So very interesting.
Yes, Prabhu. So I'll just share a few slides, and then we can, if there's time, we can. So this is the theme and the practical application that I wanted to share. So first of all, this is the theme that we are focusing on is the protection of the Lord. So also the other side is that committing offenses, accidental offenses, and so on. So the question that was asked, and we keep on asking this, how do we stop committing offenses? So Bir Krishna Maharaj, once when he was asked this question, he gave a very illuminating answer. The answer that he said was, if Krishna can tolerate me, why can't I tolerate devotees? So Krishna is with me, whether I'm in an ant body, whether I'm in a human body, committing all these offenses, whether I am Brahma and hellish planets, Krishna is always with me. Krishna is seeing all the mistakes that I'm doing, all the offenses that I'm doing, but Krishna is still tolerating me and staying with me as Paramatma. So if Krishna can tolerate me by seeing all these mistakes I'm making, why can't I tolerate devotees? I felt this was a very powerful point that I wanted to share. So, and then one thing Krishna can never do. What is the one thing that Krishna can never do? Is that inauspicious things for his devotees. Krishna will never do anything inauspicious for his devotees. It may appear like a purification, but it is ultimately good for that devotee. We may not be able to see the long-term effect, but it is actually good for that devotee. The next thing I want to say is, so especially when dealing with devotees, sometimes we get chastised for offenses we have not done. So this was another question that was asked to Maharaj. So there was one devotee who raised his hand after a class and he said, sometimes I get chastised for offenses that I did not do. So he gave the example that he was in the kitchen and he was washing dishes. While washing dishes with someone else, that other person actually dropped something which fell on the floor and broke it. So, and that person went away. So this devotee, he was cleaning up. So while cleaning up, the temple president walks in and then he starts yelling at this devotee, hey, what have you done? You always keep dropping things. You always keep making this. But he started to explain that, hey, it's not me because that other devotee actually did this. It's not me. So how do we take this? So sometimes we get chastised for offenses we have not done, that we don't deserve. So how do we understand this? Maharaj gave a brilliant answer. He said, sometimes we are also glorified for things that we don't deserve, that we have not done. So at that time we don't complain. When we are glorified for things that we have not done, we don't complain. Even that we don't deserve. We don't deserve the glorification. So why do we complain when we are chastised for offenses that we have not done? So in these situations, we have to bite the bullet and take it as our purification. So I just wanted to give one more example here. So why does Krishna actually make his devotee go through such intense purification? That's the question. Why does Krishna have to make some devotee go through so much pain and so on? So there is a reason for this, again, in relation to this particular canto. So I'll give you two scenarios. Let's say we have some disease, okay? And there are two solutions to that disease. One is you take a medicine, which is $2,000 once a month for 5 years. And that approximately will come up to about $125,000. That is one solution. And there's no pain at all. You just have to take one pill once a month for 5 years, but it's $2,000. The other option is that you go through a very painful 3-hour surgery for only $50,000. So which option would you pick? I mean, the choice is yours, but which option would you pick? So many times we tend to take the painless option, right? But this is how we would do it. But Krishna, when he knows that a devotee is very, very sincere, he actually shortcuts that person by giving him a very painful surgery, as it happened in the case of Vritrasur, which comes later in this canto, as it happened in the case of our Gajendra, also because he was getting chewed in that pain. And then in that pain, he was able to remember Krishna and immediately went to Vaikuntha. And Chitraketu also, he was on his way to Vaikuntha, but he had to go through this immediate surgery of becoming Vitrasura, and then he was taken back home, back to Godhead very, very quickly, very, very quickly. So performing surgery on me so that he knows the fastest path by which I can go back to Krishna. And the last thing I want to mention is that in all these pastimes, one theme that keeps coming up again and again is that the prayers never go unanswered. What does this mean? So prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam are from pure devotees. So just reciting those prayers will have immense benefit on us. And then we become instruments of reminding the Lord of his pure devotee. What does I mean? So here, let's take the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj to Nashingadev, right? So if we read those pastimes, if we read those prayers, then what happens is, by reading those prayers, we are reminding the Lord of his pure devotee Prahlad Maharaj. So that is another benefit. And then the pure devotee also showers his mercy on us because we are following in their footsteps. We are following in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj by reading his prayers to the Lord. And finally, the ultimate fulfillment in bhakti is to offer prayers. You can take any pastime, Dhruv Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Gajendra, any pastime you take, the ultimate fulfillment in bhakti is to offer prayers. So then you might say, oh, I can't memorize verses. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. How do I read these prayers? Even if you read the translation of these prayers in the right mood, you will get the same benefit. You don't have to be a scholar. You don't have to be a PhD. You just have to read in the right mood of that devotee in the context of that pastime. And coming back to this main theme, how does Krishna protect? So Krishna protects, as I gave the answer already, Krishna protects by invoking our remembrance of him. So there are 4 ways, and this is the take-home thing that we can practice this week. So the 4 ways that we can remember and forget Krishna. The first thing is, in happiness, we remember Krishna, which is good. And then in distress, or in happiness, we forget Krishna. Now this is bad. In happiness, if we are forgetting Krishna, then that's bad. Then what about distress? In distress, we remember Krishna. That is the best. And in distress, we forget Krishna. That will make us really miserable. But in this third point, in distress, we remember Krishna. We will have to remember that that remembrance comes from Krishna himself. And that is how the Lord protects us, by invoking his remembrance. If there's one thing that we can take home from today's class, is that Krishna protects by invoking his remembrance to us when we need it most. So in the case of Ajamil, Narayan, in the case of Vritrasura, Vritrasura did not remember the Lord until and unless he was struck by the thunderbolt. And that is when he remembered the Lord and he was able to recite those wonderful prayers. Gajendra also same. Parikshit Maharaj also same. Through Shravanam, in this case, he was able to remember the Lord. So the last statement I want to make is, we are not afraid of death. We are afraid of not remembering Krishna one more time at death. I forgot to add the not here. We are not afraid of death. We are afraid of not remembering Krishna one more time. We have gone through millions and millions of lives where we have just forgotten Krishna at the time of death. But we are afraid of not remembering Krishna one more time at death. I'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any other final thoughts, comments, or is everybody okay with this kind of discussion? Yes, Manan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Excuse me. One question, Prabhu.
Yes,
So,
please.
Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that remembrance and forgetfulness comes from him.
Yes.
And we also have one of the Navaveda Bhakti processes is Smaranam, to remember Krishna. So, is remembering something in our hands, or is remembrance something that Krishna gives?
That's also a great question, Prabhu. I'm talking about remembrance of Krishna when we are in extreme pain, extreme distress, and so on. But during the gaps between the time we get to that intense pain, we have to put our effort to remember Krishna. We have to put our sincere efforts to remember Krishna. And that is when difficulties come, that is when Krishna actually helps us. If we have been sincerely practicing throughout our life in the gaps between those intense moments. I hope that helps. And also, I want to mention one more thing here regarding all the 9 limbs of bhakti, the Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, everything. The one thing that stands out that is available for all of us. So Shravanam, for example, hearing, how often do we attentively hear? Kirtanam, how often do we attentively chant? Smaranam, when we are remembering, there's so many other thoughts that come to our mind. From a practical standpoint, okay, so Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, these are all extreme lofty things. So Dasyam, Sakyam with the Lord is extremely difficult. These are lofty things. But one thing that is in our hand is Vandanam, with his prayers. So that is something that we can all practice this week and pray and see how the Lord reciprocates, is another take home. Vishal Prakash, followed by Jitendra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I
Yes.
have a lot to say, but I think we're running out of time, so I'll get to my question first. So, like in the first slide, that you mentioned a list of things, but they were under headings: lamp, sun. Can you tell me what those mean? What
So
are we referring to over there?
yes, I can share that. You can go ahead with the other questions. I will share that slide.
No, I mean, like the rest of them are just like reflections. I really love the class. Actually, I genuinely love the discussion because I don't think I end up reading, but like, while people were reading it, even I was reading it and listening to it. So it really helped a lot. Yeah, that was my takeaway.
So the question that you asked, the lamp, the sun, and the fruit of the tree, I will share these slides with you later. But so the lamp is where you initially light something very small. So the Sarga and Nirodha, the third canto and the 12th canto, Sarga is basically the universal creation of the Lord, and Nirodha is the annihilation. Okay, so that refers to the lamp. And then the sun refers to the remaining cantos, except for the last one, which is the fruit of the tree, which is Ashraya, which is the 10th canto. Okay, so
Okay.
we'll discuss more offline with you, but those are the main topics that our acharyas have put them in.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yeah, you had some reflections or anything that you want to share?
Oh, yeah, I can go ahead now. I mean, so like I really like some of the examples. So, like Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's example about like having like water in a glass of mud. I think it was the same thing as what he had mentioned in the Saturday class about how we can't remove our bad qualities, but like, we can grow our good qualities to such an extent where like, we outnumber it. So like, I think like I drew that connection when Jitendra Prabhu mentioned it. I found the mention of Vanaprastha in text 24 slightly funny because like, if that is the ideal way to do it, then like we are very far away from it. So like, it was like, I found it very ironic. And then like the emphasis on Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, I think there were 3 or 4 texts in the one which we discussed, like mentioned, which like, which mentioned like the strength in the name, in the holy names. Yeah, so, and also I just wanted to mention, I really like Kameshwar Prabhu's answer. So when you asked the question, a lot of us had hope in our answers that like, yes, there is a chance we will be saved. But I think Kameshwar Prabhu gave like, I don't know, I really like the answer about how he must have done something in his life before, and like the utterance of the last utterance was just like the icing on the cake. Like, he was just putting the cherry on the cake. And like, I think it's easy for us to misunderstand what, like, that pastime. I think I've like, this is the second time I'm hearing it, but then like, this gave me a lot of clarity on like, the entire pastime, like the story which is trying to convey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. That's the beauty of Shravanam and Kirtanam in the association of devotees. We can churn the Bhagavatam and get so much nectar. Thank you so much, Vishal. Jitendra Prabhu?
Yeah, my question is a little, I don't know, controversial, contentious. Should I ask or?
Yeah, please go ahead. I may
Okay, the fact that I said it, I think everybody would be at the edge of their seats now. But yeah, so my question is, I've always wondered about this. Like Prabhupada has very clearly mentioned in his purports multiple times that, to 0 to 25 brahmacharya, like the 25 to 50 is grihastha, and then 50 onwards vanaprastha, and finally sannyas. So on one level, I understand that is how varnashram system worked. And then, but the fact that Prabhupada emphasizes so much on it, sometimes it is like, I wonder whether it is literally to be followed. If it is literally to be followed, then I am very far away from that. I can't even think of, Vanprastha, sannyas, leave alone sannyas. It's a huge thing. So how, and then I also know that within the movement there are different opinions. Some devotees, amongst the seniors I'm talking about, some of them, they really emphasize the literal following of that. They emphasize that no, you have to give up family at one point and take sannyas. And then some others are like, no, it is the spirit that matters. If the spirit is of true devotion, pure devotion, it doesn't matter what your varna is, what your ashram is at the time of death. So how do we understand this? Yeah.
So, of course, it is slightly tricky because Prabhupada is mentioning this in the purport. But of course, we have to understand that there is Varnashram Dharma and then there is Bhagavad Dharma. And Prabhupada always emphasized Bhagavad Dharma as a higher thing than Varnashram Dharma, in the sense that if your particular ashram is helping you go closer to Krishna, then that takes higher precedence than just following Varnashram Dharma. So that is how I would look at it, Prabhu.
Okay.
Yes. So thank you all so much. And anyone else wants to say anything? Any changes to this format or any thoughts on how we could make it better?
This is nice, Prabhuji. Very refreshing actually, and helps us go deep. Yeah.
Only thing is, with this, we'll probably be covering about 10 to 15 verses only. But I guess it's okay because we'll get to churn a lot. I think that makes. So Vishal Prakash and Krishnan Prabhu, and then we can end.
Yeah, Prabhu, I had one suggestion. I was just thinking because I saw things which I didn't understand, and then I don't want to object the flow of the lecture. So is it okay if we ask questions and questions in the group and somebody can keep answering them?
Yeah, totally.
Or is it better if we do it in the group where our chats are still there, and then we can give, I don't need the answers right now, but I would eventually so would it be better if we did that on the group, or do we do it in the chat? I just wanted
Yeah, so great question, Vishal. So basically, we have a huge range of devotees here. Some who are just starting the process of bhakti, and some who've been around for over 20 years. So what I would suggest is, I really liked what you did. You asked the question on the chat, and someone else was able to answer. So I think that's how we should keep doing it. And then when the time of discussion comes, if you still have that question and it's not answered, then you can bring it up, and then we can address it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so Krishnan Prabhu.
Actually, my suggestion was going to be very similar. My Vishal Prabhu literally spoke my mind, which is, should we focus on? I think you asked, is there any improvement to the flow? I think the flow is perfect. This is very, very refreshing. This class format is very refreshing. I was thinking, should we go till 10 o'clock, 10:15 or so, try to focus on the verses that you have planned for us to finish, and then take on questions which are slightly tangential after that. It was just, it's related to Vishal Prabhu's suggestion, but yeah, that's all I had, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, it's a little tricky because if you go till 10:15 and then we have a discussion, it might go beyond 10:30, and ideally I don't want to go beyond 10:30. So, so that's why I kind of ended at 10 o'clock today and then had a 30-minute discussion. But I don't know. I don't know the answer. We just have to experiment and see, I guess.
But this was wonderful, though. We all got to play an active role in it. Yes. So that kept us engaged. We were not. Otherwise we are. Sometimes we are. This is a very nice format. I really liked it.
Thank you, Krishnan Prabhu. So I humbly request others also to sign up as discussion leaders. So the role that I was doing today, someone else can do from next week, so that way they'll also get to read the pastime beforehand and then drive the discussion and drive the theme and come up with some practical suggestions and so on. So if anybody, all spots are taken, Nitya is saying. So, okay, so thank you. So that's good to know. Okay, so thank you all so much. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.